Merci, Monsieur le Président, et je veux remercier, Monsieur le Président, tous les députés qui ont participé dans le débat aujourd'hui à la deuxième lecture. I took many notes. I appreciate everyone's input. I appreciate that, especially that government members who don't usually get to speak on bills, government bills, brought the kind of lens that I think is important to bring to any bill in terms of what are the unintended consequences and what needs to be done to ensure, if there are some, that we avoid those by improving the bill. Do the definitions really meet the need? One of my favorite things, do the definitions really meet the need of the bill properly and ensure that it's airtight, as was mentioned? So those kinds of things, Mr. Speaker, were really good to see. And like I said, I took lots of notes. What the debate, though, really, the axis of the debate where it really moves around is whether there's support for an actual substantive right to a healthy environment, an obligation of government to guarantee that right to a healthy environment, or an ongoing commitment to the aspiration to maintain a healthy environment or restore a healthy environment in some cases, Mr. Speaker. So that's really the difference. Just like in the Charter of Rights and Freedoms, we have the right to life, liberty, and security of the person. That's a right. Those are rights. You can imagine a debate years ago about, well, that should be an aspiration because of all the unintended consequences that might occur by enshrining the right to life, liberty, and the security of the person in charter, in law. And so that's really what the nexus of this debate is. Should New Brunswick, as this bill proposes, enshrine the right to a healthy environment in law, or do we continue with simply pursuing that as an aspiration that, you know, depending on the government of the day or the minister of the day or the premier of the day will be taken it'll be on some kind of a spectrum, you know, in terms of how serious that aspiration is pursued, because in the end the government can do what it wants. And in fact, even with respect to statutes on the books, we see various provisions that just aren't implemented and adhered to by government, which is problematic. So the right fundamentally is about our health, our children's health, the right to not get sick because of the air we breathe, the water we drink, the food we eat. Problem is, it's aspirational at this point. We don't have that right, unlike in Ontario, where that right actually does exist in law. So without a right to a healthy environment, our health and well-being can be traded off for other things, as it has been in the past. There's been a sort of an introduction or a resume of a paper published in the medical literature that's coming out as a full piece of research shortly this year, done in Northern Ontario, or excuse me, Northern New Brunswick, that found a relationship between the high incidence of ALS in clusters in Northern New Brunswick and exposure to air pollution. So, you know, we don't want to trade off the requirement that the sources of that air pollution install the kind of technology necessary to eliminate any chance that it's going to lead to an increased incidence in ALS. But that's what happens. Those trade-offs happen. And the evidence is there. I mean, I could speak the rest of the afternoon laying out documented evidence of the situations where those trade-offs have been made and people's health has suffered, people's well-being has suffered, where children's health has suffered, but I don't have the time for that. We're blessed with an incredibly beautiful province, but it's not just a gift. It needs to be regarded as a right when it comes to a clean environment. Ce n'est pas seulement un privilège, c'est un droit humain fondamental. And it means a healthy environment, means clean drinking water that doesn't make us sick, safe, breathable air that doesn't make us sick or make our children sick, soil that can grow our food free from environmental contaminants, and ecosystems that are in balance so they can support life rather than driving species into extinction. Mais aujourd'hui, ce droit n'est pas protégé par la loi ici au Nouveau-Brunswick. There's just no provincial legislation that guarantees it. And the right in legislation needs to be accompanied by legal tools for citizens, or administrative tools for citizens, or procedural rules for citizens to help them uphold that right. Around the world, plus de 150 pays dans le monde ont déjà reconnu ce droit dans leur législation ou leur constitution. Canada is starting to move in that direction. In 2023, the federal government recognized the right under the Canadian Environmental Protection Act, which the Minister of Environment spoke eloquently about, and where that currently sits. And we'll all be watching where that goes. But we've got to be clear, environmental protection is a shared responsibility between the federal and provincial government. So we can't simply rely on the federal government, because there are many areas exclusively in provincial jurisdiction, which is why the Ontario legislature adopted the right to a healthy environment 30 years ago. Et ici au Nouveau-Brunswick, cette reconnaissance n'existe pas encore dans nos lois provinciales. If your community is affected by pollution, if your water is contaminated, if the crown land around you is being clear-cut and sprayed, what recourse do you really have? We just can't ignore who is most affected by environmental harm. Ce sont souvent les communautés les plus vulnérables. Rural residents, Indigenous peoples, low-income families are often closest to the most serious environmental threats to their health, the health of their children, and the well-being and have the fewest tools to push back. C'est une question, enfin, une question de justice environnementale. It's not just about ecosystems, it's about equity, it's about dignity, and it's about public health. Recognizing the right to a healthy environment will give people a legal voice, un moyen de se défendre, a way to challenge decisions that threaten their health, the health of their children, and the land and water that surrounds them. Some people may say ensuring people have an actual right to a healthy environment will hurt the economy, but that's simply not true. Un environnement sain et une économie forte ne sont pas en contradiction, they go hand in hand. Our economy is embedded in the environment, right? We're embedded in the economy. The environment supports the economy. With an unhealthy environment, we have a poor economy. Clean air, safe water, and healthy food reduces healthcare costs. Healthy forests prevent flooding, supports wildlife and wild food. Renewable energy creates jobs without emitting pollution or creating toxic waste. C'est un investment dans notre avenir. Alors, que devons-nous faire? As lawmakers, we must enshrine the right to a healthy environment in provincial law. We must ensure our communities are heard, and we must uphold Indigenous rights in the process. But let's be clear. I'm asking members in the House to vote to send Bill 19 as well to the Standing Committee on Law Amendments. This is the next logical step in the lawmaking process to enshrine this right. We are lawmakers, so we've got to make sure, as I repeatedly say on commenting on government bills, that the bill that comes out of this Legislative Assembly is the best bill possible for the people of New Brunswick. So communities need to be heard. Indigenous people, First Nations, need to be heard. And more than anything, it must, in the end, effectively safeguard the health and well-being of our children. So, sending it to a Law Amendments Committee will ensure people are heard, and First Nations can propose improvements to ensure it is consistent with their constitutionally protected rights above and beyond what's already in the bill. The Law Amendments Committee can then propose the amendments that will ensure this bill is the best it can be, and this legislature can make the changes and bring it to a final vote to once and for all, Madam Speaker, create a legal right to a healthy environment for the children and the people of this province. So I join some of the members who have already spoken and urge all members to support the motion to refer Bill 19 to the Law Amendments Committee so we can get on with the hard work to turn this into the best bill possible, a bill that will stand the test of time and be admired across this great nation. Thank you, Madam Speaker.